What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. Finally, we're back working on the RADX7 because, well, it basically drove down the tail of the dragon and then on the way back decided it wasn't going to go any further. And you all saw in the previous video, we're battling some fuel issues. So, I put a new fuel pump in it, a Walbro 525, okay, Hellcat pump. Rated for flex fuel, the whole deal. Super nice pump. Want to thank my buddy Matt for having it basically in stock here in town. Just had to go pick it up. So I got that swapped in there shortly after I made the previous video about this car. Tried to drive this thing to Cars and Coffee. Didn't bring my camera because, well, I was just so excited to drive the car. And of course, the car barely made it to Cars and Coffee. It was dropping fuel pressure horribly on the interstate. I made it like 30 miles away, then the car wouldn't pull a hill. I had to take back roads running 40 mile an hour, got the car there. The FuelTech shows me fuel pressure, I could see it dropping, car's running dead lean. And this is like dead lean at 10% throttle, not dead lean like getting into boost. Like this is the car could barely pull a hill. So, Calvin showed up to Cars and Coffee. We limped the car to Charles' house because his house is closer. Come to find out, my fuel filter was clogged. So this thing right here, this little screen, I believe I'd have to look at the box, but I think it's like a 10 micron screen. This is not like some fancy paper fuel filter. I've got that big sock in the tank, which doesn't do that much, and then I have this filter basically to suck out the junk after the pump. And I could probably run a more fine filter than this, in all honesty. But this fuel filter was completely clogged, as in clogged enough that you could not see any daylight through it. We cleaned it at Charles' house, put it back in. Fuel pressure was good, but the car still just wasn't running right at all. Now, on the way to Cars and Coffee on the interstate, I was doing some pulls, not like getting into boost, but doing some pulls as in like just drivability. So driving into the brakes a little bit, I was tuning it, not knowing that the fuel pressure or fuel filter was clogged, right? So I think I tuned myself out of a good tune because even after I put the fuel filter thing clean, switched the pump, the whole deal, it still just wasn't running. It barely made it home from Charles. It was good for about 10 miles or so, and then it started acting up really bad again. And I guess that 10 miles is more like I was kind of keeping it high in the RPM, then we tried to drive lower in the RPM, etc. It didn't work. So anyways, I get back here, and I'm ready to troubleshoot this system more, right? The fuel system on the car just wasn't cutting it. Now, I am an engineer. That's what I do, my day job. I am a civil engineer. I build sidewalks and stuff and lay out subdivisions. Now, that means I get math. I do numbers. So here's what I did. I ran a little calculation right here, which I'll show you. My chicken scratch on the back of this "Let's put new windows in your house" advertisement. So this pump, the new one, is a 500 liter per hour pump. 525, but 500 is just an easier number. So let's convert liters per hour to milliliters per second. Go through your calculation. We got 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. So now we're at 1 hour and 60 minutes, 1 minute, 60 seconds. You 500 times 1,000 divided by 60 divided by 60 gives you 0.13 liters per second, which is 138 milliliters per second. Don't get confused. This is very simple. This Gatorade bottle, if you look at the bottle here, says 828 milliliters on it, okay? So it's a 28-ounce bottle. I shoved my fuel line, because I'm just trying not to drop the tank here. I shoved the fuel line into this Gatorade bottle, and Charles turned the fuel pump on with a little switch we wired up. We ran the pump for just under 5 seconds. So, if you think 138 milliliters per second is what that pump's putting out, we filled this up to right here in about 4 seconds. So, this is 800 milliliters. It's probably 3/4 of the way full. We'll say we put 600 milliliters in this. That means the pump is actually pumping fairly close to its rated amount as it comes out of the tank. Okay? Which proves that I don't have a fuel flow or a fuel pressure issue right now. Which has led me to what you're going to see in this video, which is I'm going to start this thing and rev it here in a second, and you're going to hear it start to miss. I went ahead and put a fresh set of plugs in it, and honestly, These are the old plugs, which just had going to the Dragon and back runtime, plus some driving it around to get it on the trailer, and some idle time on them. They were brand new. So, plugs, not terribly smoked, but we're definitely running rich, and we're definitely untuned. Fresh plugs in it. We're going to fire this up. I'm going to grab the laptop, and we're going to try to... what I did this past weekend was flash this back to an earlier tune instead of the one that I had, and it seemed to rev and run a little bit better, but I think I can make it better. I think it's just running a little bit lean. I've pulled too much fuel out of it around the idle zone in the base map, so I want to just start dialing that in. We will see if we get it to run better, but that is the key here. We need this thing to be ripping, because right now, I can move it around, around here, but I can't exactly just go drive it, or at least I don't trust it. I got a Cars and Coffee event I want to go to this weekend down in Columbia, and I'm excited for that. Now that we're in the car, and I'm going to film the next video, I've figured out how to do screen... Oh man, my laptop's going to die. Gee willikers. Alright, so we're in the car now. Charger's on the laptop, or my little Microsoft Surface here. One of the things that this car kind of fails to do is start efficiently. So in here we're going to look at two things. We have prime pulse, which is effectively where you turn the key on and it's like the injectors open up for a certain amount of time and dump fuel in and they shut off. Okay, that's I think it's not cranking fuel as I understand it. It's oh no, it is. So right here on the side of the FuelTech thing, this feature improves the engine start by pulsing the injectors when any crank trigger tooth is detected, just like OEM ECUs. So what this is doing is the first prime, when it sees ignition crank, it's shooting this much fuel in. Then we go to the engine start, and this is the amount of fuel necessary to start the engine, and this is based on temperature. Okay, so engine coolant temperature, and then milliseconds of fuel injector opening time. And the prime pulse is also milliseconds, but it's only once. So it's at 30 degrees coolant temperature, when you first start cranking, it goes 40 milliseconds, and then as the next pulses happen, it's going to go to 8 milliseconds of shot, which is what mine's set up to right now. So that's the long answer to the car's kind of hard to start, especially whenever it's cold and hot. And these are the parts where when you have a real good tuner coming out to do all this, they can just figure this stuff out fairly quickly, whereas I'm not a tuner by any means. So let's start this. I'm working on trying to figure out how I can screen record the FuelTech, my laptop, and put it in here. I am not a super laptop tech guy. The other thing, let me go lower the fuel pressure. So the reason the fuel pressure was higher was because I was trying to compensate for either the filter being clogged or whatever, so I just turned the fuel pressure up. It didn't help, trust me. So now we're back down. Normal pressure, static pressure, I'm going to call it, the engine not running, because the fuel pressure regulator has vacuum and boost reference to it. So what that means is when the engine is in vacuum, it is actually lowering the fuel pressure from where I have it set at, which is 40. And then when the engine is in boost, it adds fuel pressure per pound of boost. So at 10 pounds of boost, we make 50 psi of fuel pressure. Fairly standard setup here. So let's we're gonna crank this, and I want to try to get this thing to start, okay, without me having to touch the throttle. Now, I currently don't have any TPS enrichment set up in the tune. It's all zeroed. What that means is if you give it 30% throttle, it adds 10% fuel, right? So I have no TPS enrichment set up. We zeroed that out. We're just trying to work on getting the base map really close, and then I guess we can go add that in as we need it. So let's see. One thing that is interesting about the FuelTech, the wideband O2 conditioner thing communicating to the FT450. Sometimes if you're cranking and then not cranking and cranking and not cranking, trying to start your car over and over again, doesn't consistently start, the wideband thing will throw an error and then it won't read. And then you'll have to turn it off and back on to get it to work. So just something to note. It's a little bit like, it's kind of annoying. But I don't know what they can do to work on that, but wish it would just stay on all the time. So let's go ahead and fire this up. I'm not going to touch the throttle. It's probably not going to start, but once it does start, then I'm probably going to try to keep it running. There is a post-start enrichment table, which is time-based, and these are basically the values that were in here. So I haven't messed with it. The time-based enrichment table is like adding or subtracting more fuel based on the time that it sees, like after the time it sees a specific stabilizing RPM number that you tell it, I think. So let's just see. Like I said, I'm learning this stuff, which is probably why, you know, you get frustrated when your car doesn't run right. It's because you don't know what to do. And that's what we're figuring out. We're learning what to do so we can make the car run right. Because I've done all of this with carburetors. And carburetors don't tell you what they want. They just either work or they don't, and you got to figure it out. So let's see. Okay, so it's trying. Okay, I did some rescaling on the post-start enrichment. We'll see what it does. If not, I'm just going to keep it running with my foot after this time. Because I don't quite... I need to go watch another video on setting this up before I just crank at it right now. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll figure this out eventually. We'll just have, like, bad startups, you know? Okay, so I'm watching the injector pulse on here, okay? And it's going from like, it's just jumping all over the place. So, like, it's going crazy. So this like post-start enrichment's probably messing with that. The engine temperature compensation is messing with that, which that is what's, in this case, adding percentages of fuel per temperature that it's cold. Once we get up to operational temperature like 160, then it's, you know, at 0. We're just running off the base map. So, which this map is kind of copied from, like I built this based on the Haltech's base map. Because the FuelTech one was just kind of a little bit all over the place. Intake air temperature compensation, similar thing. But that's not a huge effect right now because IAT is at 74 and we're at basically where it's zeroed on here. And when we go to the primary fuel table, I'm going to just go ahead and, so this is what I'm, just scratch my head, you know, we just try stuff, figure it out. I'm not a scientist with this yet, but we're learning. So let's, you can only like cold start your car so many times before it's warm. So it's like you try to improve it while you're getting the car started. And then once it's warmed up, you know, you can't like re-cold start your car. Wait for the O2 sensor to turn on because it's still heating. what I'm doing is just throwing a bunch more fuel at it through here. Just sounds, which it's like, oh, it said we had 190 degrees. Must have an air bubble in it or something. Anyways, okay, so I threw a metric bunch of fuel at this thing, as in like, I don't know, 40% of what was in there added on top of it. I've just been sitting here for the last probably 15 minutes doing exactly what you just saw, which is revving it and then adding fuel, revving it more, adding fuel. Apologize to my neighbors, but revving it, adding fuel. The thing that I don't like is that there seems to be like a little bit of a, like, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's like a, like there's a like a miss in it, you know? Maybe it wants more timing, maybe it wants less timing. So I kind of built a, what do I say kinda? I built a timing table based off of one that my buddy Jacob had, and kind of he walked me through like setting some of that up, and it's not aggressive. The timing table that I've got in here. You notice I had a Jeffy. This is Jacob's dog. Jacob's dog brings me sticks and wants me to throw sticks, and they just show up in the shop. Anyways, thanks Jeffy for your for hanging out. So here's like my ignition table, right? And you're seeing around 0 boost all the way across. We're at 20 degrees of timing, and then as we go up from there, at 10 pounds of boost, we're at 15 degrees of timing. And it's fairly, like, you can see the wave, if you look over here, fairly just tame. And basically where I'm revving it right now is all under 0 pounds of boost, maybe touching 0. I'm curious if that little misfire is potentially when the secondary injectors are kicking on, I guess. I gotta let the car cool off because, you know, it's only 196 coolant temp. It was 190 when I shut it off, or 100, right at 190. So it's going to heat up because the fan's not turning and I don't have an electric water pump, so the water just sits there. Regardless, I mean, it made some whooshy noises while I was revving it. You know, I'm going to go ahead and save this tune. See, this is dog life. Jeffy just gets right up in your grill. It's raining outside. He's wet and just slobbering all over everything. Super fun. Okay, so let's save this tune, and at least then I have a tune that I can punch in that's revving right now, like I have this data saved in my computer. The other thing, too, that could change this is, right, we changed the fuel pump, which means I changed the fuel pressure. So even if my previous map was, like, better, you know what I mean? Because the fuel pressure is different, if it's less or more, that's going to cause it to run rich or lean, right, based on if you keep the injector timing the same. Does that make sense? So, fun stuff. Just learning all sorts of things about this. I know some of you maybe, I don't know, some of you guys probably are just like, hey, this would be super easy, take it to a tuner and they could get dialed in, but I'd like to try to learn it a little bit before we just take it somewhere and have it all dialed. And this at least like lets me figure out the things that go wrong with it, right? Like it gets a little warm with no shroud and no ducting around the radiator. Maybe we need a bigger radiator, even though it was kind of fine at the Dragon. But so that's where I'm at right now. We're gonna let this cool off. I'm gonna come back out here and try it again tomorrow. This might be a little bit a long video of me kind of doing the same thing over and over again, which is doing this. But if it's not raining tomorrow when I go home from work and it's dry, I'll get some fuel and we'll take this thing for a drive. Well, guys, I tried to drive the car, and Charles and I made it not very far down the road, and it wouldn't make it back up the hill. It literally sounds like it's blown up, but I think it's just got fouled plugs or something. It's like I throw a bunch of fuel at it and it just runs leaner. Riddle me that. I had it revving pretty good, as y'all saw in the like my Instagram video or whatever, but literally it just won't pull itself. But it sits there and idles great, and it starts up great. It just doesn't like rev and do whatever. So maybe ignition related and not fuel related. I don't know. We're gonna start cleaning injectors and fixing other things and seeing what else is wrong, because it drives me up the wall. This stuff doesn't work, but it is, you know, part of the game is learning the game, right? And that's what we're doing. I'm gonna fire this up for you. And basically, I drove it. Charles and I took it for a drive, and we didn't make it any reasonable distance at all. I honestly have no idea how or why it was running as good as it was running at the tail of the Dragon. Literally no clue, right? We've cleaned the fuel filter, new fuel pump, reset the base fuel pressure. Y'all saw that I was revving it, and it was revving fairly clean until it got up to the high RPM, and it was kind of sputtering out. Obviously, when we drove it there, it was sputtering out. So I got the timing light out again. You saw I re-zeroed the timing the last time in the other video. And Cartmill came over and played with the tune a little bit, but we're still experiencing a rev breakup. So I'm a little bit frustrated because, like, I would consider myself, like, I'm an engineer. I do detail work. That is, like, my thing. And I thought that I had all the wiring and all the FuelTech stuff just perfectly scienced. But what I'm going to show you next, and what Jacob has lended me the knowledge of, is something that I'm just going to have to start reading forums and learning. Because I don't know why it's doing this, but I don't know why I haven't been able to figure out how to change it. I don't know. There's not enough, like, whatever. I'm going to start it. Cartmill spec idle. So basically, here's the issue, okay? Y'all can listen to this thing idle. I apologize, in the last video I turned it off. So I've got... Okay. So right now, the timing light is on trailing 2. So, see how it's like, that's not the frame rate messing with the timing light. It's like actually firing very intermittently like that, okay? We're going to move the timing light to trailing 1. This is trailing 1. Y'all can see that. It's kind of freaking the camera out. But the timing light is just ripping along. Like fully consistent. Just ripping, okay? Very fast. Let's go to leading 1. We fire that. Same thing, super fast, basically the exact same rate, okay, as trailing 1. Now, idle, we're at 5 degrees of timing, per the Jacob spec, to make this thing idle nice and smooth. But it's still like something is just not right. But what's wild is, aside from the timing map being changed, okay? Timing map. Just the map versus RPM ignition table. This area right here, where we changed it. Alright? Aside from this being changed, I have changed no other settings aside from a 5-degree shift in the offset angle, okay, of mine, which you saw in the timing, set your base timing video. 5 degrees, not a big deal. So effectively, like, it would have just been commanding 0 degrees right now instead of 5. That was the difference, right? That's the only thing that I've changed. All the other ignition settings have remained the same. So I don't know why it's being intermittent like this. I have no idea. I'm going to be bald by the time this car is done because I'm going to be doing this all the time and my hair is going to fall out. But when I had ignition issues earlier, okay, so like before the gap, Cartmill was coming over, we were trying to figure something out. I couldn't get the coils to fire. The car wouldn't run right. This is like very first start or whatever, maybe second start, right? So put plugs in it, and then we had spark. We were good, but he was like, the coils are firing a little fast. Effectively, when a stock rotary engine, or I guess like a couple different configures of rotary engine, right? Like a 12A coil, it's wasted spark on the leading. So both leadings fire at the front side and the back side. So like it's like 1, 2, you know what I mean? It's bam, 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 bam. And the trailings fire front rotor, rear rotor, front rotor, rear rotor, front rotor, rear rotor at the same rate effectively as the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So when you see your timing light on the trailing, it's slower than the leading. That's with a wasted spark setup. The FuelTech, in order to run this, is set up as a smart coil unplug, which is 1 coil per plug. So what I think is happening is my coils are firing too fast, okay? And what that is causing is it's running out of dwell, or running out of power, right? The coil is discharging too much power too fast and it can't rev the car up because we're already, like at 2,000 RPM, we're already at 4,000 RPM. Does that kind of make sense? Maybe I'm just confusing you, but I am mildly just frustrated because I have no idea. I'm not a EFI wizard, right? Like trying to learn this. I can't find any settings other than like for the FuelTech stuff, when you go to engine setup and you tell it it's a rotary, right? Number of cylinders, 2, like cylinders / rotors, right? 2. Firing order, predefined. It's already checked for a rotary. Default, 1 to 2. I mean, like, in my head, I shouldn't have to change any of that stuff from default rotary engine when the FT450 can only run a 2-rotor. So like where do I go to change it? RPM signal, right? This is all the full function engineering stuff. 36-1, my offset position is just to set that up. Hall VR with pull up, falling edge, all of that's specified by full function engineering, which is awesome. Ignition right here, all I check is smart coil / Spark Pro, and then it defaults to sequential individual coils, coil unplug. So how do I change or view or set up the firing order in the FuelTech to verify that this is correct? The coils are all powered, right? The coil signal wires from the ECU, I ohmed all of them out. There is no shorts, okay, from there to there. They have ground. They all have power and ground. I've checked that wiring already. I've pulled it all back out of the harness. I did that before we went to Deal's Gap while I was chasing down a no spark condition, you know? So I have no idea. currently. Like in this exact moment, I have no idea where to start, aside from I want to verify that this stuff is right in the FuelTech, and that this, you know, the back end of the tune is good, right? The settings are good, but like I could go spend $300 on new coils, put them in here, and get the same thing. Like I don't, you know, I have no idea why it's not firing the coils correctly. I got no clue. So anyways, that's I tried to drive my car, and literally I couldn't even make it up my driveway, and it was terrible. We had to tow it with the Mitsubishi Outlander. Thank you to Charles and Mitsubishi for bringing that deal out here. But we had to tow it up the driveway with that. I was able to get it driving in here when we had the plug, because I just put new plugs in it too. So like, it's like, oh, did it foul the plugs? Well, it had new plugs in it at the start of this video. Then I just put another set of plugs in it while it was doing this misfire thing, and nothing changed. So the plugs I took out of it are just fine. So it's not that. Fueling, I mean, I'm throwing the kitchen sink where the fuel at it. It's not running. Like when we drove it, it was running lean, but I think it's running lean because it can't burn the fuel, right? So it's just, we're not getting that rich burn of fuel. It's just dumping all the fuel back out of the exhaust. You know, I don't know, guys. Comment below your thoughts. This is a metric struggle. I really want to drive this thing to Cars and Coffee tomorrow after you guys are watching this video. It's 100% not going to make it. But what is wild and crazy is that the Calvin Hellbender tune, which is the tune that we had on it whenever we were doing, literally, it was ripping, doing pulls, making 8 pounds of boost, just wah, wah, and then into the brakes, and then wah, wah, and it was doing that. The ignition settings have not changed between that tune and this tune, you know? So, like, there's no obvious faults in the wiring. I'm just rambling. Anyways, I feel like I've checked everything. Comment below and let me know what you guys would do. This is 100%, like, this is 100% not necessarily new to me. 100% not necessarily. Might as well have just said 60%. But it's not new to me to sort this stuff out. But it's just like, I feel like I have done and checked and checked and checked. It's got to be something so dumb. I don't know. And if you see over here, I got a fuel injector cleaner now. Charles came over and cleaned some RX8 injectors through it. So I'm fired up for that. So because all that crap I got out of my fuel filter, maybe the injectors are clogged. But still, the ignition stuff's like just tripping me up. Anyways, comment below. Hopefully one of you guys is an expert and can help me. And I will get this thing sorted. I promise. We're going to figure it out. Even if it means like ripping everything apart again to try to sort out wiring stuff, we'll do it. I'll pull it all back apart because this thing is going to be a ripper. I know it will be a ripper. I want it to rip, and we're not going to stop until we fix it. So with that, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed watching me struggle trying to figure out FuelTech base map settings in this car. So keep it rad. Peace. We'll catch you in the next one. If you want to support the channel, want to learn more about this stuff, I can't exactly say I can teach you how to wire a FuelTech perfectly or figure out ignition settings, but if you want to learn about this stuff, learn how to build these engines, learn about first gens in general, RX8s, everything, go check out the Patreon. Super good group of guys over there. Y'all can ask me questions. I get to respond to them in videos. That's how I kind of set that thing up. It's kind of like a live stream, but not really. Go check that out if you just want to support. Would love to have you guys support the channel over there. It's super awesome and really appreciative. Kind of my like best, most effective way to give back to you guys. And y'all kind of get to see like the little things in the shop that I don't show in these videos. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in the background. Hopefully we get it all and get this thing fixed. And I can be not frustrated and I can go enjoy a 400 horsepower first generation RX7 that's going to be a death trap. It's going to be super fun. I'm excited. So with that, yeah, keep it rad. Go support the channel on Patreon. I would much appreciate it. Get your questions answered over there. Go check out the other videos on the channel. If you want to learn more about this stuff, comment below with any questions. Comment below if you know how to fix this thing. Keep it rad.